and welcome to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
Deeply Curious is sponsored by Hint Water. Hint makes sparkling and still flavored water that is sugar and sweetener free. We absolutely love Hint Water. It is basically the only thing that we drink. We did have an entire fridge of Hint, but we drank it all. So Hint, if you are listening, please send us more.
We're desperate.
Because the last 2 days I've been like, what the heck do I drink?
It's hard to know.
If you want to check out Hint Water, you can do that by going to hint.co/deeplycurious. I would personally recommend the Hint Fizz Peach. It is the creme de la creme for me.
I recommend the still flavors because I don't prefer sparkling water, but the crisp apple is my favorite. So fresh.
So yeah, thank you, Hint Water, for sponsoring Deeply Curious. Yeah. So jumping into this week's episode, we're going to be doing a omnibus of deep questions. So we were kind of just talking about what we should do for the podcast, and I kind of had this idea of just throwing out random questions that spark deep conversation, because that's kind of the theme of this show, is asking the right questions. And the key to any great conversation is asking great questions.
Yes.
So we're just going to start with some great questions, I guess.
We'll see if they're great questions.
Yes.
Right.
And we're just going to be talking about, we're just going to just hit things throughout. And starting with, because the human memory is known to be very unreliable, how do you know which of your memories are real and which are only partly true?
I have two things to say, I think. Okay. First of all, it's so true that memory is unreliable. And I realize this most of the time when I'm remembering like vacations or trips that we went on. Because it's always worse like in the moment, but you never remember that afterwards because you were having such a good time. Like, for example, when we went to Iceland and it was freezing cold and the wind was like 100-mile-an-hour wind and it was raining and it was just pelting us. I never remember that. I never remember how miserable I felt in Iceland because it was so beautiful, right? So, yes, memory is so unreliable. But then I also feel like the second half was, how do you know which
of your memories are real and which are only partly true?
How do you know which are real and which are only partly true? Okay. I almost feel like it doesn't really matter. Because like a memory is a memory for a reason, and like you remember it a certain way. Like I almost feel like your brain sort of remembers it how you felt it, not necessarily how it was. Right. That's a theory I have. I don't know if it's actually true, but I've thought about that a lot. Because whenever it's like something good, like a vacation, you remember it better than it was. But when it's something a little traumatic, it's always scarred, like always just deep. And then you have like a visceral reaction every single time. I think you remember it how it felt more than you do how it actually was. And in that regard, it's still like a true memory, right?
Yeah, I guess. Unless you need to recount it for public record.
I suppose that's true, yeah.
Which, speaking of that, I listened to a podcast from Malcolm Gladwell, his Revisionist History series, which is incredible. If you haven't listened to it, highly recommend. In the newest season, he did an episode called Free Brian Williams, because, speaking of memory, do you remember what happened with Brian Williams and kind of the whole scandal?
Nope.
So, a few years ago, don't remember exactly when it was that Brian Williams, at some point in his career, was in a war zone.
I don't know who Brian Williams is.
He's a journalist on, like, I don't know, NBC or something.
Gotcha.
Like, long time, like, anchor of the news. So, at some point in his career, he was in a war zone, and he has been telling this story for decades of him being in a helicopter that took on gunfire, that had to emergency land, and all this stuff. He has this whole story. Well, he ends up retelling that story just recently, and he added a few more details than he had ever added in the past that allowed some of the people that were actually involved in the situation to figure out that it was their helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And they all started coming out kind of one by one saying Brian Williams was not on our helicopter. He was actually an hour behind us in a helicopter that didn't take any fire. They just landed to help us or whatever. And so the whole podcast was about free Brian Williams, because basically he got lamented.
Mm-hmm.
And even, I don't remember if he was fired. I think maybe he was.
Probably. You're like lying as a journalist.
Right. And he was like grilled by other like anchors of like, how could you possibly, lie that much? You say, how can we trust, anything, blah, 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 blah. And Malcolm Gladwell, basically he gets to the point of just like proving how how valuable the human memory is, and how it changes and all that type of stuff. And how instead of like, saying like Brian Williams lied to make up this grand story, Brian Williams wasn't lying because he actually remembered it that way. He thought he was there.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, that's a common thing. I mean, I never heard of Brian Williams, but I have heard stories of that. Like, you're in a scenario and like you add details over the years and you don't even realize that they're not true details, because maybe my theory's right. It is how it felt in the moment, right? And like there's all of this like whatever, and so you like tell the story, but you're never going to tell it with 100% accuracy, no matter who you are. So it just happens. This isn't really necessarily about, well, I guess it's a memory. Anyway, I tweeted out something the other day about, do you ever just remember something you did like 10 years ago and are so embarrassed by it still that you just sit there for 30 minutes trying to come up with a scenario of how you should have reacted or whatever?
Yeah, like changed it.
Yeah, like, oh, if I had, been smart, this is what I would have done to be less dumb in the moment. Somebody responded and said that she does that all the time too, but she said there's this one memory in particular of like her first crush or something. Anyway, she was like 14 and she has revised it so many times in her head that she doesn't actually remember what she did or like what came of the situation. Like she can't remember. She's like, I think it's this, but I don't actually know if that was just something that I revised or not. It's like our brains, I don't know. It's fascinating.
Speaking of that, I actually have an example of a story that I have heard you tell over the years.
I tend to embellish.
Many times.
Exaggerate, whatever you want to call it.
You have created a whole new scenario.
Are you going to make me look bad?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like a big enough deal to really correct you in the moment or whatever. I just let you have your memory.
Well, you should, yeah.
But I don't know if this will be interesting for the listeners, so I'll kind of tell the story and then we can talk about the way you tell it. So we have a small Yorkie, and his name is Optimus.
Oh, he's so cute.
And we don't have him in New York City. We left him in Oklahoma with Sarah's parents. So anyways, when we first got him, I would take him on walks around the block and stuff. And there was one day that we were on a walk. I had one of those retractable leashes and I was walking, and there was a pit bull or one of those just aggressive dogs.
Like a bulldog or something.
Yeah, something like that. He was chained up to a tree in one of the yards. And whenever we walked by, that dog got really excited and yanked and actually broke the chain off of the tree and stormed Optimus and I. And Optimus, being a 6-pound dog, freaked out and just started screaming And then he actually ripped his leash out of my hand, and it's one of those retractables, so it has like a big, heavy plastic end.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and I say screaming because it was
literally screaming.
Screaming. And so he runs home because we're only like a block away. So he just like takes off running with the leash dragging behind him like a
which is also terrifying
yes,
him.
he's being terrified by his own leash, like because he like is so scared of the dog getting him, but then now the leash is chasing him, so he's just running full sprint towards our house. And he gets to our house and he runs toward the side of our house where there's like some stairs, and he huddles up against the house, and he's just sitting there like shaking like crazy. And I finally make it home, and I get over there, and like I get him and I like hold him and I take him inside and whatever, comfort him or whatever. And then this is the part that is funny, because whenever you tell this story, you say that he ran home to you and you heard him screaming.
I did hear him screaming.
I know you remember that.
No, I did.
And you like got him and you brought him inside or whatever, and you know the whole experience. Well, what's funny about that memory that you have is you weren't even home.
Yes, I was.
No. I know you remember it that way, but I promise you, you were not home.
It's not true. I was home. I remember the screaming.
I know you have developed that memory.
No.
But I guarantee...
Maybe you developed the memory.
Oh, the whole thing. Yes.
Did you think about that?
I got home and because you tell it like you heard him screaming and you came outside and you got him. I made it home and I found him on the side of the house and I brought him inside, and then I told you the story whenever you got home. And over the years, you have a picture. You have pictured it so much that now you actually rescued him whenever he came up because you heard this screaming.
1000% don't believe you.
I know, and that's what's so funny about memory is that you remember it. There's no.
Yes.
I'm not gonna be able to convince you that you don't remember it.
No, because it's wrong. I was there.
But you weren't there.
Okay. Agree to disagree.
But that's the point
always argue about
with
this.
like with the Brian Williams thing, is that it's hard for him to just admit that he wasn't there because he 1000% disagrees and thinks he was there.
But especially because he was nearby. He was like in the scenario, but not in the helicopter, you know? So you just kind of...
Because he was probably, he was in the helicopter like an hour back, and so he probably heard over the radio, like, hey, we're taking fire or whatever. Yeah. He's like, he has these audio type things going into his brain.
And it's a more traumatic experience, so your brain remembers the highs and the lows the most vividly. So it makes sense.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But I also feel like it doesn't really matter what the actual memory is. Although, to be fair, if you weren't actually there, that's a little different. But like, I feel like your brain remembers it as it was felt by you, not necessarily like the truth of the moment. So,
but if memory is so valuable,
yeah,
how can we trust people's memories in the court of law to convict people of crimes?
That's just a sticky situation that I have no answers for.
I mean, obviously, that's why you can't just trust one source.
You have to have multiple witnesses or whatever, plus evidence, plus whatever. Right. There's like all these certain things that you have to have in order to convict somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really... Well... And then that gets into a sticky situation because it's like a he said, she said, or, like one person's word against another's with no other accounts to take. So then what?
And also, like, if you remember it as it was felt, it's kind of like, I mean, in marriage, you get in arguments all the time about something that happened, and one person's like, that's not what I said, or that's not, what happened. And the other person's like, it absolutely is what happened. And are both people actually right?
Probably there's a mixture. I mean, there's always a mixture, I feel like, right? But I also know that, like, I am a person who feels things and doesn't, necessarily take it at face value because there's so much more going on underneath the surface. Because I feel like that's one of our arguments on a regular basis is I say, no, you said blah 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 blah, and you're like, I literally did not say that, and I always say, it felt like you said blah 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 blah, and it doesn't matter what you actually said, it matters how you say it, and whatever. That's like our regular argument.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely a person who like it doesn't matter, it all matters how it feels.
And I'm a person that what I said is what I meant, not how you heard it.
Big eye roll emoji. I don't know. I think that memory is a really fascinating, just the brain in general, I'm pretty intrigued by. But it's not, I don't like have any answers, and I don't even know if I want answers for that kind of, like, I kind of like the mystery of the brain.
Yes, the brain is very...
It's fascinating. I even think like, why and how and when the brain employs daydreaming as like a coping mechanism kind of is fascinating too, because it like you daydream the most when you're like stressed out or really bored with whatever you're doing, or like, and then you go like 30 minutes and realize that you have no idea what you actually did in real life. You were daydreaming the whole time. That is fascinating. And that you can like get stuff that your brain can like, okay, do all this crap that doesn't matter. And like, let's make up a story over here at the same time. You know? I don't get it, but it's fascinating.
So, next question.
Mm-hmm.
Is intelligence or wisdom more useful?
I almost said wisdom. But then I thought, well, but you have to be smart. I mean, I feel like wisdom is just a different kind of smart. Like wisdom, because wisdom is discernment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And discernment is like being able to tell what's right, what's wrong, when to do something, when not to. And like almost that matters a lot more than like how smart you are.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, like the way I think about intelligence versus wisdom is book smart versus street smart. And
to a certain degree, maybe, yeah.
Or book smart versus common sense is like how I would kind of look at it. And I've always said that I will take common sense over book smart any day.
Yeah.
And same with like intelligence or wisdom. Like if those are kind of in the same realm, the same thing, if it's just like a smarter way of asking the same question.
Yeah.
I think wisdom, I guess like for me, like I would choose wisdom
right
over intelligence like any day, anyhow, because I feel like you can like get farther in life, I suppose, or you're gonna have an easier life with making wise decisions than have just being intelligent.
Yeah.
And somebody who's wise knows how to find the answers to what they need to know. They don't necessarily need to know the answers. They're wise enough to find the answers.
Creative problem solving. They know how to do it.
So, yes. And I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, like the wise person is going to have an easier life than somebody who is just intelligent with no wisdom. I mean, because that's kind of like a would you rather, because everybody's on a spectrum.
Hopefully you have both.
Hopefully you have both.
Because I was going to say, like, yes, I agree, but also there's a piece of me that's like, I really want to be smart. Like, I want to not necessarily be known for my intelligence or whatever, but like there's something in me that's like, I want to be smarter than everybody else, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know that I could completely disregard intelligence. But I do think wisdom on a generally speaking, is the better characteristic to have. I don't know how you say that.
Yeah. I mean, it's characteristic, I suppose. And I just think like, especially when when we were growing up, like kids who were just straight up book smart, I feel like had just such a hard time in life, like in social scenarios and in like just, just fitting in basically.
Well, it's also kind of funny because you call it book smart or whatever, but people who were generally like really great in school and in books and intelligence were like kind of not smart in like they like were clumsy or just like did not understand sarcasm, and just everything was just like whoop whoop right over their head. And it's kind of hard to you look at him, you're like, how do you have a 4.0 GPA?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's interesting how usually you have like a higher percentage. It's, you know, kind of drastic.
It's
especially when you're younger.
It's the Hermione of the group.
She wasn't. I don't feel like she was like.
I mean, she was
oblivious to life. She was definitely book smart, though.
Yeah, book smart, and had more of a, you know, not like a common sense, you know.
Although she didn't really understand people, I guess.
Yeah.
Here we are, like, you know, analyzing Harry Potter characters. It's fine.
What else would you do with your life? Because Harry, he is the wisdom or the street smart or the common sense.
Right.
And not so much of the book smart.
Right.
And then Hermione has the book smart and not so much of the other.
What's Ron?
And is Ron a mixture of both, or is he just an idiot all around?
Well, he definitely didn't care about school stuff.
Yeah, definitely
Hermione
not.
wrote his papers for him sometimes.
He was definitely the dumbest of the intellectual.
Yeah. No offense, Ronald Weasley.
Yes.
You're kind of a slacker.
But did he make wise decisions either?
I don't know. He was just kind of there, I feel like.
I mean, he had to have had
He had a good time. Like, he
yeah.
goofed off, you know? That's why him and Harry were friends.
Yeah. It's interesting. Never really thought what qualities he brought to the trio.
Yeah. Hermione is the best with spells. Obviously. Harry is the chosen one. That's kind of the whole point in the 7th one, though, right? In the movie, whenever he goes off, or the books, whenever he goes off by himself, because that was kind of the whole point.
And he does come back like smarter, I guess.
Yeah, like he learned. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're missing something because that's the whole point of the trio is like they all have
something.
Yeah, equal and opposing qualities.
Who knows? I never really thought much about Ronald Weasley. Sorry.
Sorry, Ron.
Sorry.
But is it better for a person to have a broad knowledge base or a deep knowledge base?
I have an opinion about this.
So this
as with everything.
Again, that's kind of a smart question to ask. Is it better to be a jack of all trades
or a master?
Or a master of one? Here's
my opinion. You should be a jack of all trades.
And why is that?
Because I feel like, well, this is maybe just a personal. I should be a jack of all trades. The idea of just being good at one thing and one thing only for my entire life sounds like the most boring thing on planet Earth. I don't even care if it's something that I love the most. Like, I don't want to just sit there all day and do one thing always, ever, for eternity. Like, no thanks. I like exploring and I'm curious and I want to know more about, even if it's just like random stupid facts about something that doesn't matter. I love it. I get intrigued by it. And I think that
you get deeply curious about it.
I get deeply curious about it. Yeah. And I just feel like you should be a jack of all trades. Also, I read this quote recently, which backs my opinion. So I'm going to share it. I don't know exactly how it goes, and I don't even remember who it's by. So maybe if I find it, we can put it in the show notes. But it basically was saying that a human being should know how to change a tire, change a diaper, write, make video. Like, it didn't say all of those things, but basically it listed like a bunch of things that like a person should be able to do. And it said specialization is for ants or bugs or whatever. And it's so true. Like, as human beings, we have such an opportunity to know and do so many things. And like you never know where all of those things are going to lead. So the idea also freaking I understand like the 10,000 hours to become a master at whatever.
Mhm.
Please. Honestly. Like I think that that's a little dumb. I don't know. I just don't think that anybody is really going to sit there and spend 10,000 hours on Photoshop to become a Photoshop master. And like, it also just seems so like, why, who cares if you're a Photoshop master if you can use the entire Adobe suite? Isn't that better for people? Isn't it better for you to be able to offer more services to people? I don't know. I just feel like you should be a jack of all trades, and I think the whole being master of one thing is dumb.
I mean, to kind of counter your point, with a master, let's just even use what you said, like a master at Photoshop. A master at Photoshop is going to have a very easy time getting a job because they have a very specific skill that they're like, I am better at Photoshop than anybody. And so the person who's hiring, who needs somebody who's amazing at Photoshop, boom, that person is hired. They know it better than anybody. Now, some jobs, like, the companies that can't afford specialty because they are, they have to be leaner on staff, then a jack of all trades, somebody who is like proficient or really good at Photoshop, but also proficient, really good at Illustrator, proficient, really good at, whatever, InDesign. It's like that person gets hired over the specialist because, they're leaner on staff and they need somebody who can do all things.
I don't disagree with you. I feel like, is there even a human being alive who is a master at one thing, like, and doesn't care about anything else? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you're, generally speaking, that devoted to learning something and that, like, curious about something, you're gonna be curious about other things in your life.
Yeah.
Even if it just seems like being a master of one thing isn't even feasible for human beings. I don't know. Can you name a master who is like a master of one thing and like that's pretty much the only thing they do with their whole life, outside and inside of work?
I mean, I don't really think that is true of anybody as far as like they don't know how to literally do anything else.
But don't care about doing anything else.
Yeah, I mean, like somebody like a master chef that like they are a chef. Like that's what they know, it's what they love, it's what they do. Like they don't have any other professional, like if they for some reason restaurant business went out, like they couldn't find a job because the only skill they have is being a chef.
I just maybe it's just the fact that I literally can't imagine
Also, the whole time I was
myself-
saying chef, I had my hand like a Italian.
a chef.
Yes.
I just can't imagine myself doing any one thing for my entire life. So maybe that's the problem.
What's really interesting is that, this kind of conversation starts from the phrase of jack of all trades, master of none. And what's really funny about that is that the original quote was actually in praise of the jack of all trades.
Yes. I think I've heard of this.
The original quote is jack of all trades, master of none, though oftentimes better than the master of one.
See?
And like back, I don't know when it was, but jack of all trades was used as to praise somebody.
Yeah, because you can count on them to be able to, do whatever it is you need them to do.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah. I wonder when that changed. Like, when do you think we decided that being a master of something was better than knowing lots of things?
I don't know, but also I would say I don't know if it is better. I think
it's perceived that way. When you say I'm a master chef, everyone's like, "Ooh."
Yes. But I what I'm saying is I think that everybody's different, and I think for you and I would rather be a jack of all trades. Like I can't even really fathom like having to choose one thing
Yeah.
and saying like, I'm going to be the absolute best like master at this thing, and I'm not really going to care about anything else. That is difficult for me to even put myself in. But then there
Yeah.
are other people, like, you know, the chef, like that's the example. They don't want to do anything else. They absolutely love that and want to spend all of their time doing that.
Yeah.
And like going back to like the Photoshop Illustrator type thing, I mean, there's some people who are web developers that basically you could take a profession,
Right.
you know, any profession that you want, and say that there are some people who they love that thing so much, all they want to do is that thing and become a master at it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is absolute value and merit to that.
Yeah.
But then there's also people who don't want to do that. They want to be a master of, or a jack of all trades. But the question, I think, is like in our society, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is it better? Like, not,
To be master or
yeah,
jack.
like, not is it better for you personally, or maybe that is what I'm saying. Basically, there are some people who are going to have a natural
Right.
propensity to be one or the other. But what do we think is better?
Well, I mean, my initial thought is being a master at something is better. Like if you're talking about like in order to move up in society, I guess, like that would be my initial thought, because I mean, like you said, if you're a master at Photoshop, you can go anywhere and get a job, like, and be paid for it and be paid top dollar because you're the best. So like the opportunity to make a ton of money in your field is there, which I think would move you up in society, right?
Also, yes, and think about this too. Who are some famous jack of all trades from history that we actually remember? Like, what I'm getting at is we remember the masters of one.
But it's just so hard for me to even, I don't even know.
Because like the famous, you know, painters, you
Yeah,
know, it's
but
like they were master painters. And
but does that mean, I guess maybe my question is like, just because they were master painters doesn't mean they were a master of one. They could have had lots of other things that I mean, they're even like just artists in general. I think they tend to explore with a bunch of different ideas and mediums. Like, I don't know if she would be considered a master. I'm not sure. Not that I don't think she is, but I'm just not sure what is considered a master. But I just read a book by Patti Smith, who is one of the like few survivors from like the 60s, 70s art scene in New York. And like she is a photographer, she is a painter, she is a writer, and she's a musician, like the front person of a rock and roll band. And so like, would you call her a jack of all trades or a master? Because she's freaking great at all of it, and like very well known and respected, and like will go down in history from that time period, you know? So
yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have an answer to that question of like, can you remember a jack of all trades? Because maybe there are famous, like, I'm not even really coming up with names of masters of one either.
Right.
Like, you know, it's like Thomas Edison. Is he a master inventor, or is he a jack of all trades because he invented all sorts of things?
Right. And I guess that's kind of my question is like, just because you recognize and know somebody for one particular thing, does that make them the master of the thing?
Right.
Like, because like I said, especially with like creative thinkers and artists and stuff, they tend to dabble in all kinds of things, and they're usually pretty good at all of it because it's like takes a certain creative mind. But just because they excel in one particular thing, like music, I would say Patti Smith is known for her music.
Yeah.
But she's fantastic at lots of things. So just because like Paul McCartney is known for his music, does that make him master of music, or is it just because that's what we know him for?
Right. It's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I definitely like personally, just I love having a wide knowledge base,
Me too.
and like I don't want to just have a shallow knowledge of, you know,
Everything.
everything. Like
Right.
I definitely want to have a deep knowledge
Well, I think
of
you have
things,
your
but
certain, just like all these other artists, I think you have your certain lane that you excel in, but it doesn't mean you can't be really great at other things.
yeah. I mean, because I mean, I just want my knowledge base to be wide and deep and
And deep and
deep
wide.
and wide and wide and deep. Um, and because I love that, there's like creative stuff.
Yeah.
It's like I am I know photography, I know videography, I know design, I know whatever you want, like things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then also I know how to change a tire, I know how to change a
Yeah.
toilet, I know how to patch a hole in a wall.
Well, I would say you're
Like
also very business minded,
I'm
which
entrepreneur, like I
is
can,
sometimes,
yes, business skills.
yeah, that's sometimes opposing to like the creative artist
Yeah.
side, like especially the business skills, not necessarily
Right.
the entrepreneur spirit, but the business skills.
Right.
I feel like you're very good at that as well.
Yeah. So like having, I don't know, obviously you value the things that you are,
Yeah,
but I
of
mean that,
course. You can't say like, man, I wish I wasn't good at business.
yeah. But like I don't know. I just personally like I appreciate knowing lots of things. I
Yeah.
like that I can be interested, and I like that I can step into any situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any's loose, but I can walk
Yeah.
into most situations and have some knowledge to enter that situation and provide value, input, or just have enough knowledge to be able to ask the right questions. Like what we're
Right.
talking, kind of how we started this podcast of like, if I go and I'm talking to some musicians, that's a really good example because I in no way can play any instrument. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like any sort of, music like that. But because I have been around it and I have knowledge of music, I can go into a situation with musicians and be able to, well, one, understand what they're talking about,
Yeah.
but then also talk to them and ask them questions um, that
Relate
that
to.
relate to them and that makes sense to me. Like,
Yeah.
and I just like that ability
Yeah.
to be
I
able to
think,
ask those questions.
yeah. And I think honestly, like if you're just following your curiosities, like somehow they're all going to be connected together because, like you said, you are who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like, the things that you're going to excel in are going to be business and creative because that's who you are. And you can be curious and have a bunch of hobbies, but that's
Mhm.
not going to be something that you necessarily pursue as career, right?
Right.
As a jack of all trades or a master. I feel like it's the same with everybody. Like I only actually care the most about writing. But really what that means is that I care about stories. And so any way that I can find a way to like be involved in storytelling, I'm interested in. So
Mhm.
like making videos is really interesting to me, even though I wouldn't consider myself a videographer and didn't make videos until a year and a half ago, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, but it's really interesting to me and I want to get better at it because it's a way of storytelling. So I think that if you're just following your curiosities, they're all going to kind of be related to each other. So you could maybe be a master of creativity with different
Mediums.
mediums.
Yeah. Outputs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something?
Yeah. I don't know exactly where I land on the answer of which is better. I think
Yeah.
that there are absolute advantages to both.
Mm-hmm.
But one example that I literally just thought of, like as myself, because I'm always thinking about myself.
Yeah. I mean, we can't think of life outside of
Yeah.
our own heads, so.
Is being I would consider myself a jack of all trades.
Mhm.
Right now in this season of life that we're in, and in no way are we rich, and
Not at all.
we're not
Yeah.
like set where we don't have to ever make money. And so like one of our friends just asked if somebody could help her like renovate her office and do some painting and some like handyman work.
Right.
Well, I actually was able to easily say yes, I can do that because I have those skills, even though what I do day to day literally is sitting on a computer
Right.
using uh, like very little muscle groups.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and so if I was just a master at that, I would have, being
You
asked,
wouldn't have known how
right,
to tape to paint.
right. It's like being asked to like, hey, can can anybody do this? I'd be like, man, I wish I could do that because we could like use that money.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, yes, I can do that because I have a wider, skill set.
Right.
So I was just thinking about like the answer of it master or jack, which is better. I mean, the jack of all trades could survive in any climate, I guess.
That's true.
Because if the thing that they're a master at, they can't make money, or that goes out of style, or whatever, that industry crashes, can they continue? What skills can they use?
Yeah.
Versus a jack of all trades is flexible and can do whatever is necessary.
That's true. Now you've changed my mind. I think a jack of all trades is better.
But I don't actually know, but does a jack of all trades ultimately, make a comfortable living but never excel?
I think it's very possible for a jack of all trades to excel in a certain whatever. I think that's where like discipline comes in though.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least this is maybe a personal, like I'm attributing this to myself and not necessarily all jack of all trades, but I'm so interested in so many things that I can't devote myself to anything,
Right.
So like it's hard for me to be like, yes, I'm going to pursue this because, whatever. Because I say like, oh, I'm going to pursue this, then I just feel like I've missed out on a bazillion other things, which is not true. It's just like a season of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a hard time committing to one particular thing for a certain amount of time. So I think it maybe just takes discipline.
I mean, yeah, that's just the millennials' biggest problem of decision paralysis.
It's the worst. Honestly.
Everybody. That's like the millennial crutch.
Yeah. I didn't used to think I had a problem with it, but I have a big problem with it. I can't pick a thing to save my life.
Because none of us, like, what we all have to realize is picking something doesn't mean picking something forever.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that if that doesn't work out that you're a failure.
And also not picking anything is still a decision.
Right.
So like just because you're like, no, I'm not going to pick anything, that way everything is open. You picked not learning anything.
Right.
You picked not going in any direction. You picked to stay still.
And the quickest way to success is to fail early and fail often.
Right.
The sooner you fail, the sooner you're going to find success, because it's like
creative problem solving.
If you pick something and it fails or you're not good at it or whatever, you're like, oh, okay, check that one off the list, next. And you like go down the next one. Versus if you sit there looking at all the options,
you feel paralyzed.
You failed from the beginning. Like you are never going to reach whatever your success is because you're not trying anything. So you just have to.
You chose stagnance.
Yes.
Totally. Preaching to myself.
So I think that is a good spot to end this episode on. If you liked this kind of just random question omnibus of topics, let us know by commenting below the video if you're watching on YouTube, or you can hit us up on Twitter. My handle is @CodyJensen. Sarah's is @Sarah_Jensen, and that is the exact same on Instagram. You can hit us up on any of those forums. Let us know your thoughts.
Let me know what you disagree with.
Yeah. But more so, let us know what you agree with, and how much, what you like.
Yeah.
Positivity.
Love it.
Yes.
I just love discussing things, so
Amen.
I'm open.
Yes. I think that is like that's like us. That's the reason we have this podcast.
Yeah.
That's like the thing that we love. We just love discussion, even if it is about things that we don't know about, and like that, you know, it's like it's an ignorant conversation because we don't actually know about it, but
who cares, because it's exciting.
right, it's fun.
I told my friend yesterday, we were FaceTiming, and I said, the truth is, my entire life, the truth is that I don't care about the answers. Honestly, 1000% don't care about finding an answer. I love the discussion and the exploration and the questions. I don't care what the right answer is, because I don't actually know if I believe there is a right answer, because there's like I was going to say a billion people. There's 8 billion people in the world. I don't know if there is one right answer to anything.
Yeah.
But I love the exploration. So.
There are very, very few things in life that have a specific like answer, because
I agree.
most things are going to be on a spectrum for lots of people.
Yeah.
So.
Anyways.
But it's a fun discussion.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. As our friends Rhett and Link say, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Our friends.
Yeah.
We watch them every day. It feels like
they're our
friends.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to our sponsor, Hint Water. Again, if you want to check them out, you can go to hint.co/deeply curious. You can actually order online, and they have a subscription service that you can sign up for to have water shipped to your house. And yeah, that's the end of this podcast. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week.
Bye.